And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford and Adam Scheer with you on this Saturday morning. EMAC gets the weekend off. Believe he's traveling, so you'll probably hear from somebody else on Monday morning as well with Chris Rendon, who's newly minted a boxer. Paying attention over there on Twitter. One, what the hell is going on? But two, there's a boxing match apparently that's going to happen between former colleague of Adam and mine, Pete Christensen, also known as Draft Cheat, and Chris Rendon, who some of you may know from podcasts and shows here in at Awesemo or from Bachelor in Paradise. The simulation we're in sucks, and I hope it gets rebooted soon. But good luck to both of them. I hope there are no concussions or brain injuries. But Adam, how the hell are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Nice to be. Basketball the last few days has been a little bit less frustrating than for most of the season, so that's been good. Back at the apartment, looking forward to the weekend. So everything's good here. How you been?
You sound very similar to how I feel. The congestion, the winter, just malaise of.
I'm allergic to dogs, and growing up with them, I kind of got over it. But now I don't have any. My mom does, and I spent most of the week at my mom's, so I've just been miserable.
Well, there you have it. I'm just sick because I have little minions that bring germs home every single day from school, but I'm also allergic to dogs, so I stay away from them as best I can. We have a 6-game main slate. That's what we're going to talk about on this Saturday morning. You get the NBA strategy show. You get, of course, live before lock as well on Saturdays. You get a ton of content over there available at Awesemo.com. We are now on the outside of your 20 for 20 promo, so if you missed out on that, look forward to other promos, but you probably screwed the pooch a little bit there, not getting in on $20 for 20 days at Awesemo.com, Awesemo Plus Premium. More will be coming down the pike, though, so stay tuned over at Awesemo_com and Awesemo NBA and the like for ways to get in to Awesemo.com. We are brought to you in part by Yahoo DFS. Yahoo, a leader in the fantasy industry. I'll talk a little bit later on about how to get on there and exactly how to succeed in playing some DFS over on Yahoo DFS. We have 6 games, as I said. Let's go position by position here since we have 6, but we will talk about these games individually. We look at some of the injuries that matter. Anthony Davis, I haven't seen anything new about him and his bruised buttocks. It's a tailbone, but fine. His bottom hurts. And hey, when you fall hard, you've fallen on ice, you've fallen down the stairs. Everyone's done it. Playing at a high level, it stinks. Joel Embiid's out for a couple of weeks with that gruesome finger injury and surgery that he had subsequently after that. I don't know what's happening with Drew Holiday as of yet. I know he was out Friday night with the elbow. I'm going to assume on a back-to-back he's out on Saturday as well. But all of these things are just to say, pay attention, right? Lots of injuries to some of the bigger names on this slate that could grossly affect how ownership goes and where the top plays of the day are. So stay tuned to Awesemo.com. Stay tuned to Twitter as we go through. Anybody that I didn't rattle off there, I guess Porzingis is out as well with a knee. He could be out again Saturday as well. And we've talked about Doncic's usage many times over. If Porzingis is out, or pretty much anyone is out, is there anybody that you think is worthwhile to flag here, Adam, as injury concern or injury that could really change this slate besides the guys that I've mentioned?
I think we also, and I'm pulling it up now, I think it came out, right before lock on Friday, we got Hassan Whiteside is questionable for Saturday. So that one, obviously, he played he was questionable Thursday, played well, still listed as questionable with an illness, but that's one that we'll obviously want to keep an eye on.
I joked with Adam about being sick, but it is that time of year, and the flu apparently is resistant to the flu vaccine. So you're going to start getting some of these NBA players and who are just out and are out for days. And think about it. If they're out for days, we're going to be out for weeks. Like these guys are getting fluids and all sorts of things. And if we come down with this stuff, we're on the shelf for a long while. But we're going to start at point guard, make our way through center. We're going to go quickly. We're just setting the scene for you as it comes to this Saturday slate. Luca Dante is our most expensive player on the slate. He's our most expensive point guard. I will reiterate, this matchup with Philadelphia is not great. We know they're a good defensive team, but Embiid is out. And talking on, I believe it was me and you, on the Thursday pod, that yes, they're still good defensively, but there's enough of a drop-off here to maybe see some upside for the top talented players out there. So you take Embiid out of the middle, and you take Porzingis out of the mix. 12-4 is lofty here, Adam, but it feels like it's the right price. And if you can get there, get there as often as you can.
Yeah, it's one of those prices where it's not quite the same as James Harden when he was 12-8 or 12-9 or whatever without Westbrook against Atlanta, but it's kind of similar in that if he were any less expensive, it would be one of the easiest plays on the slate.
Right.
Where he is, it's not that he's overpriced at 12-4, but you do start running into some constraints where it's like, okay, you can only fit so many other guys. So it does come down to what value is available and how the mid-range looks. But, on its face, I think 12-4 for Luka's fine. Alex and I talked about it a bit on the deeper dive on Friday, but Luka's actually been a little bit less productive in the full games without Porzingis than his numbers without Porzingis on the floor as a whole this season suggest. The assist percentage has been lower. The per minute production has been lower. And I think it's probably the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. There's in some ways his numbers without Porzingis, for the entire season are going to be skewed because a lot of times those minutes are coming against the second unit where like Porzingis is on the bench and Luka stayed in or whatever. But at the same time, you can just run bad in assist percentage over, 5 or 6 games too. Also not really surrounded by the best offensive players. So that could be another reason the assist percentage comes down is you don't have Porzingis to knock down shots when you pass him the ball. So I think overall, you're still looking at a really, really productive player in a pretty mediocre spot, but a really, really high ceiling for Luka.
Yeah, and I will say something I think Lofty does pretty well. I think on the podcast specifically and in his write-up, and I know you follow along the same sort of path of intended assists, right? The idea that there were opportunities for assists and missed shots, and we can't calculate the percentage at which those shots should be made, but it does give you a better idea of, is this point guard, is this usage guy getting a guy in a position to make a shot, to potentially have an assist, and are those numbers waning? Sample sizes matter, and obviously you don't want to read too much into a 4 or 5 game stretch. But to your point, looking into that sort of thing and seeing over a 5 game stretch that he was at 30% of intended assists, you can start to at least project a much higher ceiling here than you may get from just looking through the box scores and understanding exactly how he's been playing and how the box score is showing what he's been doing. We do have LeBron at 10K flat against Oklahoma City, Dame Lillard, Ben Simmons, Zach Lavine. I'm going to assume again that Drew Holiday is out. It's also a matchup with Boston, which is a mediocre matchup for a guy like Holiday. They have a good defense. There is some upside with the front court not being the best at rim protection, but Kemba Walker's on the other side at 7,600. I think that's a huge plus matchup for him. What do you make of the top tier point guard? Where else might you go? I
think that Lillard, it's a tough matchup against Milwaukee. Obviously, they're a good defensive team. He is cheap for how many minutes he plays, though, so that's decent. Simmons against Dallas is okay. Lofty and I had talked on Thursday about Simmons playing huge minutes, and that makes him a viable option, but he doesn't get quite as much of a bump with Embiid out as some other guys on Philly do. I think Zach Lavine is really interesting. Obviously shooting guard on FanDuel, point guard, shooting guard on DraftKings, but his price tag isn't really moving. He's playing massive minutes for Chicago. He's leading the team in usage, obviously, and now he's got a favorable matchup against Detroit.
I like it. And I think Lavine's somebody who has started to go under the radar a bit this year and has maybe not the same exact ceiling as some of the top tier guys, but he's shown the ability to hit really big peaks when it comes to DFS scoring and overall NBA scoring. And this matchup with Detroit seems like a positive one. He is your most expensive shooting guard over on Yahoo at $34. We'll point out that shooting guard consists of Lavine at the top, then Gilgeous-Alexander, McCollum, Jaylen Brown, Colin Sexton, Josh Richardson. So it gets kind of dark pretty early over there when you take into consideration exactly how much talent may be at the position. Let's talk a little bit about the mid-tier and make our way through point guard using DK pricing. Again, it gets kind of murky pretty quickly. You have SGA, you have Jamal Murray and Will Barton. Josh Richardson had a very solid game last time out. Don't know if we can translate that to Embiid being off the floor per se, but did well at the free throw line, attacked the rim a little bit, had 42.75 DraftKings points, just $6,400 here. And then you make your way into the, sort of murky underworld of point guard with the Josh Harts and Marcus Smarts of the world. Anybody worthwhile that you want to flag here as a potential? I was reading shooting guard. That's why that happened. Sorry. But nonetheless, a lot of these guys are multi-position eligibility. Yeah. You do have, to throw in Lonzo Ball and Chris Paul, Ball up to 6,700. And then I thought something was wrong there, and finally it made sense.
I only noticed it because I couldn't find Josh Richardson.
Yeah, Josh Richardson's the one shooting guard eligible,
Yeah.
only guy in all of DK. It would have worked out fine if it wasn't for Josh Richardson. But anybody else mid tier or cheap that you want to mention at point guard, and then we'll move over to shooting guard, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, so I guess mid-range, but Kemba and Derrick Rose are both still interesting to me. They both jumped close to $1,000 in price on DraftKings, but they both were pretty clearly mispriced in their last games. Kemba played his normal run. We got 31 minutes in regulation from Derrick Rose again. So both of those guys are pretty appealing in pretty nice matchups. Kemba against New Orleans, assuming no Drew Holiday there, makes it a little bit more appealing. And then Rose against the Bulls. Chris Paul's been playing really well, still cheap. Not a good matchup against the Lakers, but the salary is pretty solid. CJ McCollum, tough matchup against Milwaukee, but anytime you can get someone playing 37, 38 minutes at $6,500, I think it's certainly worth considering.
Being I already ran through a lot of the shooting guard pricing, this should be easy. But I do want to point out over on Yahoo, you have Lonzo at 29, Kemba's at 31, Derrick Rose 26, which is a decent savings there on Derrick Rose against some of those other names you're mentioning at similar price points on DK. So again, if you're playing on multiple sites and you're trying to find the right mix of players, look elsewhere, right? If you want to play a Derrick Rose, but you feel like his price is too high on a on a DK or FanDuel, maybe Yahoo has the price point that you like, and you can construct the lineup a little bit differently over there. To move to shooting guard next, already, as I said, rattled off a lot of the names here. Josh Richardson is shooting guard, small forward eligible. You have Zach Lavine at the top. Talked about him a bit. Chris Middleton is shooting guard, small forward. You have the same for Jaylen Brown. You have the same for Richardson. These are some names that are in decent spots. You throw a Brown out there at 6,900 who has some upside against New Orleans. Middleton has Portland at 75 and Richardson at 64. Are these names that at least pop off the page to you at shooting guard only eligibility on a site like DK?
Yeah, it's kind of tough. It's like nobody's in a really, really good matchup. Like Jaylen Brown, I think, is in one of the better matchups on the slate against the Pels. He plays big minutes. The salary is probably about where it should be. You mentioned Josh Richardson, and while he's not the kind of guy that's going to have monster games every game that Embiid is out, he does get a bump there. He already played big minutes, but when Embiid's out there, Richardson is taking a pretty big hit usage-wise. Without Embiid on the floor this year, he's got about a 23.5% usage rate. He is capable of scoring. He just isn't a primary option on a fully healthy Sixers team, but he can fill in pretty nicely when you're replacing Embiid's usage with someone like Mike Scott. So he does get a bump. He plays big minutes. I think that even though the matchup against Dallas isn't particularly appealing, there's not many matchups you can look at on the slate that jump off the page as being good. So I still like Richardson based on how much he plays.
Yeah, and I will say the thing I liked a lot about Richardson's game flow last time out was that he was on the floor a lot without Ben Simmons. Not a lot, but enough where, again, Simmons isn't necessarily filling in all those gaps for Embiid, but you're getting a solid 8 or so, maybe 12 minutes of Richardson being out there with Tobias Harris, being out there with Mike Scott and Trey Burke and Korkmaz. And again, this is one game, small sample, but you like the idea that he's out there as that sort of solo offensive act with Simmons not on the floor, maybe getting a little bit more of a usage bump as well. He had 29 points and a plus minus of 15. I know they won this game, so that makes sense when you back it out. But I do like Josh Richardson as potentially following up. For me, ownership matters so much with a guy like Richardson. Are people going to box score surf and go after him again or see ownership elsewhere? Any cheap options at shooting guard that, at least could be viable this early on as plays that people should research a little bit more, at least keep in their back pocket as potential plug and plays as we get to Saturday lock at 7:00?
I think Kobe White at 4,300. This is the kind of slate where I like going to someone like that. The minutes are all over the place. Some games, I think it was 2 games ago, you saw 32 minutes. I'm not sure how much he's played on Friday. That game's currently in the fourth quarter, but I don't think he's played 32 minutes. But he's capable of it, and he'll shoot when he's out there. He has the ball in his hands a lot, high usage guy. So in a good matchup against Detroit on a slate where you don't have, at least as of right now, a ton of really good value, I like taking a chance on a guy who at least can break the slate. Like if you played this game 100 times, he breaks the slate a higher percentage of the time than most players priced around him.
Kobe White, $10 over on Yahoo. So looking for a bare min guy who could maybe give you a utility play, guard play, or shooting guard. I like that call a lot. And I think, again, the idea is not a single game outing. That projecting that's tough, but 100 times or 1,000 times, whatever it may be, this is a guy that may give you some upside when you construct lineups and even more specifically MME a bit on a slate like this. Small forward is next. Again, the likes of Luca Doncic, you do have MPE on DraftKings. Roster construction should push you towards playing him at point guard, a small forward or guard, utility, whatever it might be. Make sure you're playing around with that if you are building lineups, that you're not just locking him in at point guard and then moving from there, because you're missing out on other pieces. So if you're new to the game and you're trying to figure out exactly how this all works, try different constructions with that puzzle piece in different spots and trying to understand exactly where he fits. Use an optimizer, use whatever you might, lineup builder from Osmo, which is a good tool for your single entry or just trying to figure out where you're at, just to understand exactly where he might fit best, because you have Doncic here at 12-4, and then you have Giannis at 11-5. One, I saw an article saying that Giannis should leave Milwaukee and sign with Dallas. I mean, sure, yeah, Doncic, Giannis, and KP would be amazing.
Yeah.
But sure, I mean, whatever. We'll see that in the future. But you have Giannis at 11-5, LeBron at 10. Do you value Luca or Giannis more on this slate? Like, if you were to take these two head to head and say you can only have one at small forward, who do you like more?
I would lean towards Giannis because he's a better per minute producer than even Luca is. He's like the only guy in the league that is better on a per minute basis than Luca. Luca's minutes tend to be between 34 and 36 minutes. Giannis is normally like he'll average 30, 31, and that's in large part because of blowouts. I like Giannis a little bit more when he is on the road, especially against a decent team like Portland that you would hope can hang in the game and maybe get you 32 or 33 minutes from Giannis. And then on top of that, on DraftKings, he is $900 less expensive than Luka. So I would give Giannis the slight edge there.
That makes sense. And I think all things being equal, both are in fine spots and well, maybe not. You like Giannis a little bit more, and I agree there, but both have the talent, the greatest talent in the world, and have ceilings that are near each other. Doncic at 58, Giannis at 56 over there on Yahoo. Trying to pull up quickly here the spreads for some of these games on Saturday and see if they're available as of yet. But where else do you see yourself going at small forward? We have the likes of Simmons, and we introduced Brandon Ingram. Jason Tatum is 8K against New Orleans. Middleton, again, eligible here. Brown, we talked about. Tobias Harris is somebody that I think a lot of people talked about with Embiid out last game, should have some upside. Hayward, Josh Richardson is eligible here. Danilo Gallinari at 6,200. So there's some names that have some upside, some guys we've seen some big ceiling games from in the past. What are some that stand out to you as potential plays on this slate?
Yeah, you mentioned Harris, who I'm not sure how he did. I don't think he did very well. I think he had like 33 DraftKings points last game, but he does get a usage bump, and he plays big minutes as well. He's I think a good option, very, very reasonably priced. Danilo Gallinari coming off of a monster game at no ownership because he went from being out to questionable halfway through the day, but still affordable. Not a great spot against the Lakers, but should play 30, 32 minutes. And then you have Melo, whose salary is down to 5,600 against Milwaukee. The Bucks are a good defensive team, but if they key in on slowing down the pick and roll with Lillard and to a lesser extent with McCollum, you could get some pretty open looks from the wing for Anthony, who's playing big minutes and is cheap. So I think he looks like a really good option.
That makes a lot of sense. And Melo, I know, gets a lot of slag, but he's cheap. Like he's at a price point now that if he stumbles into 8 rebounds and 24 points, because that's what he does, it's a pretty prime spot to do that at what I would assume would be pretty low ownership. What about getting really deep here? Is there a game where Kent Bazemore actually learns how to score again? Like, is that something that happens in the distant future? He's playing tons of minutes, and I know that's sort of where we start with lineup construction. We want guys who are playing. Is this just a lost cause for him? Is he lost all skill to play in the NBA and score? He went 0 for 8 in his last game out.
I mean, it's just a lack of opportunity. Like, minutes are obviously where you start, but you also have to look at who he's playing those minutes with. And he's playing them with Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Carmelo Anthony, and Hassan Whiteside. So any shots coming out of like a half court offense are coming from Lillard, McCollum, or Whiteside's taking care of getting the offensive rebounds and putting it back in the basket. And in transition, you're still a lot of that's going to the other, to the guards. So Bazemore on this team is kind of just out there to play defense and hopefully knock down open looks every once in a while if he gets them. But minutes only take you so far. And the thing about someone like Bazemore that keeps me from rostering him is at his salary and with the minutes he plays, he's going to project as a good point per dollar option just because even if you play 30 minutes and you average 0.6 points per minute and you're $3,500 or $3,600, you're still going to project for around 6x. And that does have value. But what happens is he ends up being really, really popular because every optimizer just forces him in because of what he opens up for you. And so you end up getting, like on Thursday, I had him projected for, I think, 19 or 20 DraftKings points. I think most people were in the same range. And he ends up being 28% owned just because and the low point per minute players are the easiest to pivot away from because there's just not that much risk in doing so. And there's a huge advantage. So I just end up not rostering guys like that because they are basically never going to project for a lot of raw points. And it's really, really easy for them to not give you a score that you need. And everyone just ends up rostering them anyway.
I will point out, Adam's not keeping secrets. I think his mic's just going from time to time. Nothing major. We can hear what you're saying, Adam. So don't freak out. I know you care so much about how your voice sounds here on the podcast, but
it's funny because I realized I'm using my good mic now for the first time in a few days, and I realized that I did the deeper dive without it earlier. So
there you have it. But nonetheless, it's funny. So quickly, and I don't want to belabor the podcast, but so do you then manually adjust your projections? Like do you, or you're manually adjusting your exposure using an optimizer then? Is that what you're doing? If Bazemore keeps cropping up and you look at him and say, holy crap, I don't want, he's not going to give me what I need. I'd rather spend $4,200 on somebody rather than $3,800 who has a higher ceiling. Are you manually going in and changing things to say, don't give me Kent Bazemore?
I mean, technically I'm not doing it manually because so when I make my lineups with the optimizer, I have exposure limits set for all the different players based on how likely I think they are to reach a target score. And players like Bazemore aren't going to he's not going to have that much higher of a likelihood than the players priced around him because he's just not that volatile of a player. And if I'm looking for 28, 30 points from someone at his price point, he might be the most likely out of the group, but it's not by a big difference. So when I make the lineups, I might get around the field. But then once I do that and I'm choosing the lineups that project the best while also being the lowest owned, he's one of the first guys that starts getting kicked out because I'm not really losing anything by not having.
Makes sense. I appreciate it. So let's talk some power forward next. And I will point out over on Yahoo, if you use the promo code AWESEMO, you get up to $30 in Yahoo sports reward points. So check that out. And we talked a little bit about the pricing over there. I hope you've checked it out. EMAC does an article, I think pretty much every day, but it depends on the size of the slate where he looks at the building blocks on all sites, but also looks at Yahoo. So you can check out the link therein to get some more information. I will point out listen, Anthony Davis is one of the best players in the NBA. And I want to acknowledge that. And I am not someone who is as enamored with his injury history as some others. Steve Finkelstein, who, Adam, I don't know if you know or not, you are one of them. I don't know if you listen, Steve, or not, but Steve and I went to middle school and high school together, and Steve helped get me into the DFS industry, but he's obsessed with Anthony Davis being injured. He's also obsessed with Bryce Harper's hair, but that's neither here nor there. But the note from, I believe it's RotoWire, yeah, it is just, it makes me smile. Davis will miss Friday's game due to the gluteus maximus bruise he sustained during Tuesday's contest. Oh, AD, bless your soul. Listen, he's missed 3 games on the year. He doesn't miss that much time. When you boil it all down and look at his actual games played and its minutes played, he's playing about the same as most other stars in the National Basketball Association.
Yeah.
Yes, is he going to the locker room more often? Absolutely. I agree with that. But we have an injury here that could keep him out on this slate. We don't know yet. He was out Friday. We'll wait to hear what's going on Saturday. I would assume he's listed as sort of doubtful/probable for this contest.
Doubtful/probable?
I would say I don't know yet. I feel like it's going to be in that range where it's either he's most likely not to play. He's not going to be out. I don't think we're going to get that he's not playing Saturday night.
So the thing that sucks is I think we're going to get questionable, and there's not going to be shoot around because it's a back-to-back.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Like we got really early news on him on Friday, but Friday I'm assuming they had shoot around, and it was probably pretty obvious that he wasn't playing. I think it might be a little bit more of a pain.
That's a great point. And I always mix up what the actual designations are for NBA, NFL. So I apologize there, but you're right. You're going to get exactly right. Questionable with no other details.
Right.
And you're going to wait for game time decision. And
you're going to be making your lineups at 6, and then you're going to get an alert. This is Anthony Davis. And you're like, okay, cool. And then it says game time decision or still questionable or something like that.
But still hurts, but may give it a go.
Right.
So he's 9,800. So that price point against Oklahoma City, and I get Steven Adams is there, but that seems cheap enough that if he's playing and so I know this is all conjecture, but it feels as though if he's playing, he's going to play a full allotment. You're not going to run him out there to play 20 minutes. He'd be a great play on this slate, right?
Yeah, if he's playing, he's a great. He's not going to be limited. He's a really good option. A quick aside because I missed it at small forward, but LeBron's salary on DraftKings dropped a full $1,000 overnight. So he goes from he was already a good play on Friday, but $10K for him potentially without Davis is stupid. But yeah, if Davis is ruled in, LeBron is still a good play. Davis is also a really good play. There's no real reason to think that he's going to be like limited or anything.
Right. If he's in, you're playing him and pay attention. Saturdays can suck if you're a family man or woman trying to figure things out and you're out and about, but be locked and loaded. Don't try to wing this one because I think there are enough injuries on this slate that there's going to be some leverage, not leverage. There's going to be some ability for you to really exceed expectations on where ownership is and understand where things might be and where they might come to pass. So I think this might be a fun slate to really be honed in on what news is coming out as lock comes around. And even on a site that has late swaptimizing, is that what it's called? Being aware of how you can move pieces, make sure you have, again, I said this about Doncic before, have players in the right spots. Don't play your early players in guard, forward, and utility. Play them in point guard, like know how you can leverage some of those things. Leverage was the word I was looking for before, by the way.
As in kind of add on to what you're saying about the news on Saturdays, if you do have the time to dedicate to it, I still think that Saturdays and Sundays probably have the biggest edge in NBA because there's less content. The content tends to come out earlier in the day, less of it up to lock. And so, yeah, you're kind of, not on your own, but it's harder to find quality content, that deals with breaking news. So I think if you do have the time to devote to it, you should be.
So Adam's saying, we're here for you. You're not alone. We're here at Osmo.com, and now some slight orchestra music will come up in the background. No, but honestly, we have Slack chat, and we have obviously Osmo.com, and we have the projections that are updated throughout the day, ownership projections. So if you want to become a member, check out Osmo.com, check out Osmo_com over on Twitter for ways to do just that. Where else do you see yourself potentially going? Again, Tatum and Brown and the like of this Boston offense, I think, have some upside. You have Tobias Harris at 6,800, which seems like a palatable price. Horford in there as well at 6,700. Gordon Hayward is somebody who has had a sort of roller coaster season with some big upside and some really crappy games along the way. He's at 65. What do you like at power forward overall, and what are some of the names that you find most intriguing?
So Ingram, I think, is interesting because it's a tough matchup against Boston, and that'll probably keep people away. But the guy's playing out of his mind without Drew Holiday. For the season, he's averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. He's playing huge minutes. Yeah, it's a back-to-back, but the salary dropped also from 9,200 on Friday on DraftKings to 8,400. Probably not going to be a cash type guy just based on looking at some of the other pricing, but certainly has the upside to give you 50-plus fantasy points. At probably low-ish ownership in tournaments. So that's pretty appealing. Tobias Harris, we already talked about. Al Horford, 6,700 against Dallas. I assume he'll start at center again. You could see Kyle O'Quinn start instead of Mike Scott against a little bit bigger Dallas front court potentially. But either way, Horford should get a lot of time at the 5, and he's a lot more productive without Embiid out there. So he looks like one of the better options in any format. I expect he'll be one of the higher owned guys on the slate, but the salary looks really good for him. It didn't really move all that much, whereas you saw it really jump up for someone like Josh Richardson.
I like it a lot. And I think that you see a lot of times people shy away from the Boston Celtics, but there are enough stats to sort of cobble together an idea that their front court isn't very good defensively. So you have a great overall defense, but you talk about an Enes Kanter and Daniel Tice. There's enough pieces here that an Ingram could have himself a very, very big day here. And as you said, he's had a bit and he's like 22 years old, right? I always forget, like, these guys who've been in the league for 3 or 4 years are just realizing sort of their physical and mental ability in this league. And Ingram, I think, is starting to really come into his own in New Orleans as a usage guy and as a guy who can be a leader with this team moving forward. Any cheap options at power forward, or ready to sort of close it out with center?
Jeremy Grant.
I don't see anyone, but
yeah, I mean, Jeremy Grant's salary jumped. He should still play big minutes without Millsap, but certainly not as appealing as he was at 3,300 on whatever other day it was. So just a quick aside, in the same, just like we talked about Kobe White being that guy where he's going to fail a lot, but he at least gives you a really high upside. The same can be said for Michael Porter, who let down everyone.
I was going there next. Yep.
Yeah. Let down everyone last time out, but if he's shooting well, should get additional minutes. Mason Plumlee kind of in the same boat. With Millsap out, there's potential for either of those guys to get a little bit more run.
Yeah, I think Michael Porter is the sort of guy that we always have to remember how big a prospect he was, and the back injury and all of these things that happened to him coming out of college, and whatever decisions he made and whatever decisions were made for him. But he has immense upside. Like, he has the skill set there to have a 40, 50, even 60-point DraftKings outing, depending on if he gets the opportunity. Minutes haven't necessarily been there on the regular, but he's shown in limited minutes that he's had some immense upside. So I was about to bring him up to you, and I appreciate you bringing him up before I got to. Well, actually, I wanted to talk about him first, but that's fine. That's neither here nor there. Let's talk Drummond at center. Listen, Drummond, Jokic, Whiteside, less so, but Drummond, Jokic seem to be in prime spots. 10-1, 9-7. Is this simply just taking a look at ownership and deciding between the two of them?
Yeah, especially so we know that Millsap's out. We don't really have news on Barton, who missed Thursday's game for personal reasons. But if Barton's out too, that's a lot of usage and a lot of facilitating going to Jokic, who has been playing much better lately. Really good matchup for him against Cleveland. Nice matchup for Drummond against Chicago, though. Wendell Carter Jr. out. You're getting, I mean, it should be another game where Drummond goes out there for 20-20 or 25-25 or something like that. So, yeah, I think that ownership is key, but I also do think that Drummond should be higher owned because he plays a bit more than Jokic does, and because this is a spot where he should be able to just do whatever he wants.
Yep, that makes total sense to me. Where else do you see yourself going at the top end of center?
So I mean, we talked about Horford. You can play him at center too. Steven Adams is only 6,400. Luffy and I had talked Thursday that we thought he was getting really overprojected by some other sites, that we thought he was a good play, but that we didn't see 34, 35 minutes being the norm for him. I don't think he played 34 minutes, and I think he's going to play like 30, 31 normally. So at 6,400, he's fine, but he's not someone that I'm super excited about. If Davis is out, then obviously you can go back to JaVale McGee, who is now 4,100 on DraftKings after being 4,300 and 33% owned on Friday. He would be one of the most obvious plays on the entire slate. The leverage there would be going to $5,100 Dwight Howard instead, but obviously that's a bit of a price bump. Daniel Gafford is at 4,400. He could start against Drummond. Not sure how many minutes he played on Friday, but that would be another pivot that you could potentially look at.
Lots of information still to be had on a 6-game slate. So this injuries and the way these lineups will shake out will matter throughout the day on Saturday. Get NBA strategy, get live before lock on Saturday from Osmo.com. If you're watching this video on YouTube, ask as always, subscribe and hit that alarm bell so you know when we go live. But also on this video specifically, hit the like button, share a comment, whatever it might be, whether about this show or other shows. You can talk about the upcoming boxing match if you so choose. Feel free to comment on that. Let us know who you think Adam or I should box in the DFS or, celeb reality sphere in the future. But nonetheless, let us know in the comment section about the show. We appreciate you all, as always, for watching and listening over on the podcast platforms. You can find Adam on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. You find me at Dan Strafford. Of course, you can also find Osmo_com for the website, Osmo NBA, and all of the different handles for the different sports. Each and every day, we're here with you for the DFS Early Bird, except for Sundays. So on Monday, you'll get Chris Rendon and somebody. I know EMAC is out. Don't know who's been filled in there as of yet. Adam and I are with you every Thursday morning. Lofty and I Fridays, typically. Wednesday mornings, it's Chris and myself. And then Tuesday mornings, it is EMAC and is Adam. So that is your schedule as always.
It's EMAC and someone else. It's not me.
No, well, somebody. Oh, is it Joey at this point?
Sure.
Sure. You know what I appreciate? I appreciate the role I play here being a secondary thought. That's what I really I kid because I love. But nonetheless, find all that available over on YouTube, iTunes, and across all podcasting platforms. Check out Osmo.com for all your subscription needs. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks so much for listening to the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com.